Say no energy is created, no destroy. So I guess we'll figure out how this cannabis market comes back to life, because no energy is created, no destroy.
You're back.
So guys, we've gotten 113 applications. Great job, by the way, going through it. Thank you. We got our separate list from the MCBA crew. We picked our best list. And I think in drilling through these applications, we've identified not only what we think we can achieve, but we've actually gotten a good sense organically from the applicants themselves, what's possible and what's possible with our capital. But we really need to I think, make the best decisions for the companies we're going to invest in. We need to come with a set of principles that we want to make sure are consistent, so that we're not just saying, hey, this is an interesting company, let's go for it. And that way, when we apply the capital, also for setting milestones that we can hopefully do this in a second run of companies. So instead of doing 1 or 2 companies, we might have a chance to do 3, 4, 5, strategically work with another 15, where we can actually create 20, which when they go out to the community ends up with 50, 60, 70 people, companies benefiting, which really can drive the exact program goals. So,
Sounds like a rocket to me.
Sounds like a rocket to you. So phase 2.
Sounds like a rocket to me.
Well, look, we're studying Bernoulli's principle, right? We have to get the air underneath the wings.
Correct.
So in that, I want to make sure that we all, since we've all reviewed some of these, and obviously we don't have Peter on the phone yet, but when we get to the people that we're going to bring in, what are the 7 or 8 things or 6, or what are the principles that we want to make sure that we're consistently applying, so that we can all bring our individual mindset to it, but that we know that we're at least using the same framework, so that we're all playing off the same music. You know, look, you might be playing cello, playing violin. I don't know what I'm playing, but so.
What they call that guy in the middle that does this?
So let's go ahead. Right. Yeah.
Okay.
So let's come up with some framed out principles that we want to make sure are Merida consistent, MCB consistent, and consistent with the aspirational goals of the program. So with that, the floor is open.
Well, what about, we want any company we invest in to be a company that we would invest in irrespective of this accelerator, that it fits the Merida portfolio, but another consideration should be how impactful will the money be for that business and for that management team?
Right, not finding companies that we're just putting a check into a fantastic company that's already growing and the minority aspect is irrespective of that, doesn't achieve the goals. What do you think, Brandon?
I think that's important. I think sometimes in business, a lot of folks don't actually know their numbers. You and I talked about that before.
Sure.
You have to know your numbers, and if you don't know that this would be helpful to them, and they don't know how it would actually help them get to a goal, if it's just in a general capital raise, maybe that's not the company we really want. We want a company that's trying to launch and that can use the resources, be it network or capital, to actually do that. So I agree.
Do we want companies do we want to make it a point where we want companies to be cognizant of the fact that these are principles? Because I don't think we want to, and I'm using this word in a really loose fashion, but we don't want companies to feel gratitude towards us. We want them to think that they meritoriously won this based on the economic impact they can have. But again, that's why I want to frame out these principles. So those 2 principles sound great as to if we can divide them. So kind of, if we were going to frame those out, what would be, how would you articulate those two principles?
Well, I mean, when I've had conversations with some of the companies I've talked to, I've asked, how much of a difference would 50 or 100,000 mean in terms of funding, and to some, it would make a big difference. I mean, that's what they really need to start running the business and start operating. And then in other cases, I found that it really won't make much of a difference because they're looking for a much larger capital raise.
So we are letting companies know, as we're talking to them, that this is meant to be not a venture program, but that we are looking to make a high impact within their company structure itself, not just from the scaffolding and the capital stuff.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, the scaffolding part was huge because what are you scaffolding? I think we talked about leadership qualities, the quality of the person who were on Cheddar at the stock exchange. It was such a big moment to acknowledge. I guess when the guy asked me, never talked about, he put me on the spot so bad, like, are you the ideal candidate? And I was like, well, I feel like I'm coachable. And I feel like, if you put a scaffold
That was interesting, by the way, that he asked you that.
Right.
You're part of you're the judge.
And I'm the judge, am I the ideal candidate? I hope so, right? And
Well, clearly MCBA is, because we're putting our faith in the joint ability of our two organizations to pick winners, to scaffold them. I mean, some of the scaffolding that needs to be done can be sales help. There's certain things that MCBA can do that we can't. Right? There's a credibility, and you guys are putting as much faith in us as others. So Connie, we have two articulated principles. Max, jump in here. What's some other principles you want to do?
So I think that there's one or maybe two that can work with both of these first two, which is in line with we want to make it a company that we would invest in normally. Is this something that we could see sort of an add-on investment? If we take this accelerator as like a seed round of sorts, do we see a lane to a Series A or a B or a bridge or something like that in the future? And then the other one, which sort of talks to more of the disadvantaged communities line, is does their business service disadvantaged communities just naturally? So are they going to be helping out these communities where they're coming from, and so could a $50,000 or $100,000 check targeted at this community actually have an outsized impact within, whether in Baltimore or whatever? Could we have an outsized impact there? So
and so not even just even as a principle, that might be something that as we're investing, we make it, or not a condition necessarily, but say, hey, while you're building, and look, we don't want to build the model from scratch. We want established businesses to some degree. But while you're applying that business model, is there a way that you as a person of color or disadvantaged or someone who's had a criminalized background because of the war on drugs, is there a way that you can elevate either the consumer, educate, and we've looked at some business models that we think fit the education side, the employment side.
Social good.
Yeah, we know those guys in Detroit, on a no-name basis, we don't want to give, until we've invested in those companies, we don't want to give them the push in their businesses just yet. But like a Shark Tank, right? Just by being on it, you're going to be second. But I think someone who can educate for more employees and really just establish standards that can be applied. Like for one of the things that Brandon and his team teaches us, and we also learn, is what are the standards? Like when a company like Merida, who has been investing, I don't know, for 3.5 years and put more than $100 million in the cannabis space, what should we be looking at when we're looking at disadvantaged communities? And what should they be looking at when they're looking at business models, the validity, the validation? What should a business model entail that can attract capital on a meritorious basis? Because the one thing we discussed early on when thinking about programs, someone gives you a social equity license, that's just a piece of paper. That's not a business model. That's not you could lose a lot of money with a license. I know.
I mean, what is that thing you talk about? Open plan to develop a business? Live plan?
Yeah.
I mean,
it's like Lotus Notes. It's like the pre-sell version of, but we're going to be careful because we didn't actually use that on something. So we don't want to use that as the example. Yeah, right.
Well, I mean, I just say that because one of the crazy things you talked about, I love rockets. It just came from NASA. I gotta do this because it's my inspiration.
Too many movies because of the 50th anniversary of the moon landing.
But I mean, who would have thought that a man woke up one day named President Kennedy and says, hey, one of the things that we have to do is set a standard for leaving Earth and going to space in the next 10 years because we want to take everyone else with us and force a new frontier for us to get along. We want to force the station, force Russia, force China, force everyone to come together so we can get along. And 50 years ago, they did that. And just the same, you woke up one day and said, hey, I'm going to force an opportunity for people to get into this industry, make an impact. But one of the biggest things about the rocket...
This analogy is comparing Merida to John F. Kennedy in the moon.
I mean, it is historical, and I think
our new sales pitch. We're John F. Kennedy and NASA, only slightly different.
I mean, you know, but you know, John F. Kennedy and NASA is almost two big forces.
But I see the analog. It's two kinds. But it's amazing.
But when you say the shuttle versus the rocket, right? The shuttle versus the rocket.
One's delivery methodology.
Right, and one's the way you come back home.
Right.
And so we talked about the imprint that they'll leave in the community. A lot of times I think we get people who just want to leave the community. You know, and I gotta bring it up. I got Nipsey Hussle's birthday is today. I have to bring it up. Nipsey Hussle's birthday is today. He never left the community. You know,
right.
And that's a big thing. And I think Merida wants to have a lasting impact in
Well, and you know, on that point, there's a selfish aspect. Like, let's not be foolish.
No, that's a good one.
John F. Kennedy wanted to beat the Russians.
Yeah, sure.
We want to tap into a lot of talent that is untapped and markets that are untapped. And this is a great way to go.
Right.
Okay.
So why I brought that up in the rocket sense is because when they launched the shuttle, like Atlantis, it had 3 stages. And in that second stage, you lose your boosters. You lose just the fuel container. And the part that's reusable is the shuttle. The shuttle came back almost 22 times, I believe.
Right.
And so when we talk about what Merida's invested in, over $100 million, is not for people to set a business and just leave the space and now leave that community barren.
Right.
That's why I love the art projects and some of the higher education models that you guys picked out also, because of what's the lasting impact in that community. If it's black, white,
By the way, the guy with the
Latino,
Baltimore dispensary is here.
Really?
He's here. He came up with Brian Lopez. He's here today.
I'm really
He just he comes in and I'm like, we were just talking about this. He loved it by the way, he has a huge wall in Baltimore.
Okay.
And our Detroit one has a huge 100-foot long. So this could really happen. So okay, principles. We've got the 4 principles so far, right? We've got, does the money make a difference? Can you serve? Do you serve disadvantaged communities? Is your model something Merida would look at, irregardless of what you're doing, just pure merit-based? Do you fit Merida's methodology, right?
I would add one to that, which is something that we're always looking for is that we call it like the slope, like skiing down a slope, where you just need the capital to push you.
Yeah.
And I think
capital efficiency
why
has its
wouldn't we
own
look for that
virtue
as well, right? So
absolutely. Yeah. So capital efficiency has its own virtue.
Capital efficiency, that sounds like a term.
Capital efficiency. We use
Capital, I mean, who knows what, what is capital efficiency? What is capital efficiency?
Stare at the camera when you say that. So,
I was gonna say, you didn't mention ecosystem yet.
well, the ecosystem, I mean, obviously as a model, where you fit in our ecosystem, and that, so what is the impact?
We'll put it another way.
Yeah, what is the impact?
Is there a puzzle piece missing that we can bring to push the company?
What are your friction points? When we talk about our business all the time, we talk about how do we remove friction points. So is there a friction point that we naturally can remove through our ecosystem? So
Strategic fit.
yeah, strategic fit. So I think that sounds like 6 or 7 principles. I think we should run with those.
I would add one more, which
sure.
is not only the knock-on effect for disadvantaged communities,
Sure.
but also the knock-on effect for the cannabis industry as a whole, evolving the cannabis industry as well.
So almost a philosophical point about, does what you do have a potential impact to advance the industry's goals, which we all know is to be inclusive, right? But also, it could be an education point. So we're looking for an idiosyncratically exciting company based on what it can do to advance the industry.
Yeah, filling the gaps that are in the industry. There are many, it's unevolved in the space, and we're trying to further.
So we've narrowed this down to 19 companies.
19 companies.
Out of the 113 we looked at. Now we know the questions we need to ask of those companies individually. And then the goal would be what? We bring 7 or 8 of these, whoever fits all 7. And maybe we say, you have to fit 7 or 8 of these principles, that's the Goldilocks. If everyone fits 6, 5, and then we prioritize and we bring them in and we do it in person and then we pick some winners and write some checks, sound like a plan? All right. What do you think, Brandon?
I mean, it sounds like stage 3 is going to be way more interesting than stage 1 and 2.
It's a lot of work though. I mean, these guys, you guys had to drill through 113 applications. Not all of them were easy to read.
I mean, it wasn't like you made it any easier for us. You made us develop our own scoring rubrics. You made us identify what we found as friction points. You made us normalize language within our organization, which was really, really helpful.
Good.
Because, having an organization that's both advocates, business owners, and civic leaders, and then you got myself and Ty, we just run a wrinkly old business accelerator.
Don't forget what Merida was. You met me when I think we had $2 million under management, and I wanted to come to Baltimore, and I personally wanted to make an impact on a community, the veterans, people who are passionate about the medicine, and this is an extension. In a lot of ways, Merida obviously is an extension of me and my team, but we've seen the negative side, right? Early on in this space, people who join now missed they missed the part where this was really hard to even launch a business, where people kind of like, are you serious? Cannabis? Wait, that's the cannabis guy. He's doing a cannabis business. And I think one thing is we have a chance to ourselves pay for it, and that's why we're going to give these companies our all. So
we're excited. We're excited about how many companies aren't necessarily asking to touch the plant. And
crazy CBD. Who knew? How many CBD business models?
A lot, and I think the understanding that we're going to be able to impart about the value of data is something that I've been chasing down for a while. How much is your email address worth? I guess who's ever going to pay the highest price?
Right. Well, I do think having companies that can touch the company, and there is something around, one thing I think, I don't know if it's in the principles, but it is something that we should always be cognizant of, which is there are companies who are surviving, right? We've talked to a few of them, their business model seems to be valid, they're surviving with capital. You take away the money stress of like how am I going to build this? That efficiency can really, then you talk about thriving rather than surviving. And we always talk about that as a principle. When you take away that stress, it leaves a lot more bandwidth for development, strategy, collecting information. When you're so over your head, they say you can't fill up any more water than a cup can hold. Right. So hopefully our capital can be a little bit of spilling out the water, leaving some room for additional strategy.
You said water. Bitch said water. Water is he's super hype from like when we got
Sun Tzu. Eat water, allow it to flow.
Oh my God!
I think we can stop it there.